Hello, this is Ellie. In this video, I'm going to be answering some of your questions about the making of my second short film, Egg. So first off, what animation tools/software did you use? I used several different programs over the course of making this film because my first short film I made that with cheap, very limited animation software. I had a very limited color palette, for instance, and I think there's only 2 layers. After that first program, I transitioned to professional grade software called TV Paint. You can find a lot of videos on TV Paint from Aaron Blaze's YouTube channel if you're interested in learning more. So I used TV Paint for animation. I used Procreate for the backgrounds. Toward the end of the project, I was getting really tired of sitting at my desk all the time, so I was looking for an animation program on the iPad, and I found Rough Animator on the iPad. I think it's only $5 right now. So of all the programs I used, if you're just getting into animation, I would probably recommend Rough Animator the most. If you have an iPad with an Apple Pencil, because I don't think it works if you don't. As far as editing programs go, I used Vegas Pro to edit the whole thing. This is the final file for Egg. Those should be all the, those are all the final shots, so you can see sort of what it looks like here. If I zoom out, you can see all of these are sound files. So that's all the sound effects for the film, which I edited in Vegas Pro and in Audacity. What inspired you/made you want to make the film? By necessity, because making a short film is such a long process, I needed some underlying themes or subject matter that I really loved. So for me, some of the inspiring things were I really loved drawing small animals. So the main character is a small animal. I really love birds. So there's a flock of birds in the short film. Some other themes that I included to carry me through and hold my interest, because it really needed to be something that held my interest, was a protective character. I really like the visuals of a character holding and protecting an egg. Another trope I really like is interspecies adoption. When interspecies adoption appears in media, especially where they end up staying together as a family, I really love that. How long did it take to make? I started Egg in September of 2019 and published it to YouTube in September of 2022. So it took me 3 years, but I was not working every day of that time period. I would take breaks up to a month long where I didn't even touch the project. What is the animation course you credit at the end of the video? The animation course is an online animation class that I took when I was in high school to a year after I graduated. The target demographic for the animation course is 11 to 18-year-olds, so if you're in that age range, I would highly recommend it. That's pretty much the only formal animation training I've had. Other than that, I pretty much just watch a lot of YouTube. Did anything get cut or dramatically altered in the story? How close is the final product to your original idea? Overall, the project is a completely different story. It was based on a story I had been working on for a while of 2 characters who adopted a baby bird, and I just had to make it smaller and smaller because I was not going to have 2 main characters, and there were a lot of specific world building ideas I had that would not fit into this kind of short story. Like, the main character in Egg doesn't have a complex backstory, but the original 2 characters did, and that just didn't fit. So in the end, it became a completely different story, and I'm really happy with that because now I can still tell the story of those other 2 characters. If you're coming from Tumblr, you probably know I'm talking about Rook and Kay, who are the 2 characters who adopt a baby bird named Tin. Now, the main character of Egg is called Fern, and she is similar to Kay in some ways, but definitely not supposed to be the same character anymore. Another addition to the story that changed it dramatically was the lizard, because the first drafts did not have enough conflict to really be a complete story. So I started including a lizard who was going to be not quite an antagonist, but an obstacle, and then it became more and more antagonistic as I kept on drafting the story because it seemed like there was not enough conflict. Yeah, so overall, final product is very different, but definitely the original themes remain because it was always about adoption. It was always about protecting someone more vulnerable than you. So I'm happy that the original spirit of the story remained. Did you record the total hours worked on the project or the different aspects of it? I did not record the total hours worked. For some people that might be encouraging to see I don't know how you would record it, but to see the hours stacking up, I don't know. Is that encouraging to people? For me, that would be pretty stressful. Do you intend to keep producing YouTube solo animations, or are you just trying to work at a larger studio as a career? To a certain extent, I would say both, because I do plan on pursuing a career at a studio. If I was just pursuing YouTube, I don't think my plans would change that much from what I'm doing right now, because I would still be solely producing animation and posting it here. Would you ever consider making tutorial videos? I would if there's a demand for it, and if there isn't already a video on the question people would like answered. So for instance, I wouldn't make a YouTube video on the 12 principles of animation. I don't have anything useful to add that hasn't already been said by other people who have better editing and speaking skills than me. So if people ask me, like, could you make a tutorial on the 12 principles of animation, for instance, I could just show them to Alan Becker's animation tutorials. And then for things like TV Paint, I can point people to Aaron Blaze. So basically, I would make YouTube tutorials if there is something that I don't see covered by other people. But also only if there's a demand for it. Like, I didn't know if I would make this video because I didn't know if there'd be a demand for it. But you guys were nice enough to send lots of questions, so I really appreciate that. What animation principles do you find to be the most important when animating something like a short film or in general? I don't think I'm able to keep all of the 12 principles of animation in my head when animating, but for me, the ones that I think about the most are squash and stretch, timing, and ease in and ease out. When I'm looking at my own animation, trying to figure out what's wrong with it, I can usually think about those principles and figure it out from there. How did you balance working on your short with other things like maybe school/work? So basically, if any life event had potential to get in the way of my short film, I would choose family before working on it. That's part of why it took so long. But I think also that spending time with family or even just working was a needed break. I think it helped prevent burnout. And even with all that, I still had a lot of time to work on my short film because I'm not a very social person. Did you ever feel like stopping? And if so, what kept you going? Yeah, I definitely felt like stopping a lot. Trying to remember why I wanted to make the short film would help in those times. And then if I was also, I get depressed about the quality of my work fairly often when working on a long project. When I had those really dark moments, yeah, I would pray that something good would come from the project. And sometimes I just needed to take a break and come back. What is your biggest inspiration slash motivation to animate? I can sound really sad when talking about working on my own projects because I've been working on such long projects, but I wouldn't finish stuff like this if I didn't love animation, and I really love animation. But a lot of the time, my inspiration and motivation to animate is the smaller things. For instance, when working on the film, one of my favorite things to animate is blinks. I enjoy animating the slow ins, and I enjoy animating tracebacks. So it's not always about grander inspiration or motivation for me. Sometimes it's the little things. What is your character creation process like? So for this one, it was different because I adapted some characters from a previous story into this short film. So I had a base to work with. One really important thing I added to the character design was eyebrows because the original characters were more animal-like and did not have eyebrows. But for the short, she really needed to be able to emote. But overall, I tried to keep it as simple as possible because I'm drawing these characters so many times. I almost regretted giving the lizard so many stripes because I got sick of drawing stripes. But in the end, I think it turned out okay, and if I had fewer stripes, it might have looked too simple. What's your favorite part of the egg animation? My favorite part was the crocodiles because they changed the least from concept to final, and also the final shot in the film where the egg hatches because that one is one of the most polished shots in the film. I worked really hard on it, and I think it turned out well. Would you consider making a sequel or short little story pieces on how the mammal and bird grew to bond? This is one of the most common questions in the comment section of the film. I will probably not produce any direct sequels to Egg. I think the story is pretty complete. There are definitely directions I could take it from the moment the egg hatches, but I think it's pretty well contained, and I enjoy where it ended up. I might make more illustrations of them, but these two characters will probably not appear in another animation. How did you keep up your motivation to finish the project? There are a few different ways I would keep up motivation. As I said before, the project itself was designed to keep me motivated because I got to draw a lot of cute animals, and the story was something I cared about. So that helped keep up motivation to a certain extent, but it was also so big that that did not matter a lot of the time. Even if it was something I really enjoyed drawing and animating, it's still really hard to keep up motivation for such a large project. So something of a fix for a loss of motivation for me is to find an external motivator. I can use making this video as an example. In this case, it was feeling a little bit guilty that this was late. So I was like, I gotta make this video for all the people who sent me questions. And then also I asked my sister to tell me to do it. And she was like, well, when you get up in the morning tomorrow, make your video. And that really helped have an external source of motivation, because sometimes telling yourself to do something doesn't work as well as having somebody else tell you to do something. So make a project you really want to work on, and then when that fails, get somebody to tell you to work on it. I would also say start small with your first long-term personal project. Egg is not my first short film, and I wouldn't recommend making a project as big as Egg for your first short film, because working on a project and finishing a project are very different. Yeah, I would say getting practice in finishing projects is important. How long does it take you to complete one shot in all steps of the process? Each shot would take a variable amount of time depending on how many characters, the complexity of the animation, how many frames, the complexity of the background, and so on. So it varies a lot. The bird shot took 6 weeks. What's your favorite dinosaur or any kind of prehistoric animal for that matter? I really like velociraptors, both the Jurassic Park versions and realistic velociraptors, small bird-like animals. For prehistoric animals in general, I really like terror birds. What types of creatures were in Egg? Were they animals from Earth or your own universe? There are no real-world animal species in Egg. The main character, Fern, is a fictional species of mammal called an oppie that is most similar to the real-world quoll from Australia. The lizard, in my mind, most resembles a very large skink, but is also a nameless fictional species. The baby bird is a fictional species that resembles a large flightless eagle called a choro. Choros have 3 major subspecies, but the one in the film is intended to be a rain choro. Do you play any video games, and if so, what do you play? And, oh no, I died. Oh, I died. Oh, that is not a wall. Nope, recently I've been playing a lot of Hollow Knight. What's your favorite Pokemon? My favorites are mostly Gen 1, which I think makes me pretty basic. I like a lot of unevolved and middle stage evolutions in Pokemon. I think middle stage evolutions are really underappreciated. When did you start animating, and what does your progress look like then and now? I started animating in 2012 on Flipnote Studio, which is a program on the DS. So if you're curious as to what some of the first animations I ever produced looked like, it's pretty impressive. Was there anything that you learned from creating the robot shop that prepared you for Egg? I did a lot of things differently on Egg versus the robot shop. I mentioned the shift in programs was a big deal for me. I could not have made Egg without first making the robot shop. I think that's very important for people to know, because even though I don't enjoy looking at my work on my first project, I could not have made anything better than the robot shop if I didn't make the robot shop first. As for the voice acting for this and the robot shop, who did you get to do the voices? Did you do the main character in Egg yourself? For the robot shop, I had my sister voice the customer and a family friend voice the store owner. I think since it was my first project, just having people I knew do the voices worked really well. For Egg, I very briefly considered doing the voice myself, but as soon as I tried recording anything, I realized I was definitely not going to do that. It had to be someone who could act, which meant I was going to have to learn how to hire someone. So I did a bunch of research on how other independent animators casted their short films. I found some wording that sounded professional and then based my casting call on that. In my casting call, I said that I wanted Fern to have an adult female voice in either an authentic Australian/New Zealand accent or a general American accent, and that I wanted her to sound sweet but not saccharine. After posting the casting call, I received about 30 auditions, which was much more than I expected. Looking through my inbox as those came in was really exciting, but also sort of nerve-wracking. The voice of the main character is such an important aspect of the film's overall aesthetics that it was really difficult to think about making a decision. So I brought in my sister to help me choose. We both listened to the auditions multiple times over the course of several days. In the end, we chose Charlie Rowan as the voice of Fern. I think she was the only one who really captured the tone and attitude I was going for with the character, in particular when delivering the line,
"No, I won't let you take it."
A few auditions had delivered that line with a little bit of a cocky attitude, but out of everyone, I think Charlie Rowan really nailed that serious, almost dark sense of determination that I wanted for this moment. I also think Charlie did a great job with the direction of sweet but not saccharine. A few auditions seemed to take that in the direction of childlike, which would not have worked for the story I was trying to tell. So I contacted Charlie about the part and shared the script and some storyboards to give a better picture of the overall project. From there, I think it went really smoothly. Charlie was great to work with, and almost everything she recorded was ready to add to the storyboard on the first take, which I found really impressive. How did you find someone to do the music for your animation? My first plan for getting the music for the film was to contact a composer who works for an animation college. I emailed them through a form on their website that said they were available for work. I don't know if the form wasn't working or if the composer had just neglected to update their website, but that inquiry went nowhere and I never got a response. So for a while I continued to do research into royalty-free music, but I had a fairly specific idea in mind for the tone and the pacing and even some specific instruments I wanted in the score, so pre-made music was probably never going to feel right to me. Then over a year into production on Egg, I noticed that the artist behind the royalty-free music on the Robot Shop had updated their website with new contact info. That was amazing to see because that meant there was a possibility I would be able to commission the same artist I had used previously. So I emailed Rose Azerti about producing some music for a short film I was working on. Once I emailed Rose, it went really smoothly from there. So I had a few people in the comments of Egg ask me since posting it what song is playing. All of the music in Egg is available on royaltyfreakmusic.com. It is original music composed specifically for the project, and I think it turned out amazing. What do you plan to animate next? I have several projects in mind. The one I'm most likely to animate next is a super short film. I'm going to aim for less than 30 seconds, but it's going to be set in one of my sci-fi universes. It's a micro short, so I can't really say much more without spoiling the whole thing. But that's probably what I'm going to work on next. So that's most of the questions. I initially planned on answering every question I received, but editing this sort of turned into more of a challenge than I expected. This video is only about 15 minutes long so far, and my editing program has crashed at least 12 times. So if your question was not answered or if my answers left you with more questions, let me know in the comments, and I might be able to make more thorough scripted follow-up videos on specific topics. If you want to find any of the channels or resources I mentioned, I will put the relevant links in the description. There will also be a link to my gaming channel that I will use to post videos not directly related to my animations. If you want to find me on other sites, I am most active on Tumblr as Ellie Jaybird, where I post about my world building projects, but you can also find me on Twitter and Instagram as Ellie Jaybird Art. I will also link the sites of the voice actor and composer for Egg. Without them, the project would not be what it is, and I think they both did a wonderful job. Finally, if anyone is watching this while working on your own personal project, I want you to know that it is possible to complete it. It might take more research, and it might take more time than you expected, but you can do it. Thank you for watching.